Even though we're approaching the end of the year, there's still a few major games on the docket, and one of the biggest and most anticipated, for me personally, has probably got to be Path of Exile 2. Now, the original Path of Exile is one of those rare, good, free-to-play games. It's actually free, there's no pay-to-win garbage, and all the microtransactions are totally optional, well, except for extra stash tabs, but if you're just playing the game casually, you never really need that much extra space. The sequel was originally announced as an extension of the first game, but it's now evolved into a whole new beast with better visuals, overhauled systems, improved combat mechanics, and it's coming out to early access soon. It's one to watch out for, and there's a whole lot to talk about. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, let's talk about Path of Exile 2, possibly the biggest action RPG still to come in 2024. So when it originally came out, Path of Exile was a pretty intentional throwback to Diablo 2. It's got more of a deliberate, well, everything compared to Diablo 2, and it's got the grimdark setting. It's evolved a lot since the old days, to be fair, but the atmosphere and focus is deep on character building and dungeon crawling. That never went away. I mean, it's a game for people who like Diablo 2, absolutely, and I like Diablo 2. Anyway, the sequel looks like it's building on everything people liked about the original while doing away with or drastically changing some of the things that are a bit more divisive. Path of Exile 2 is, for the most part, the same kind of game as the first. It's an action RPG where you control a character from a top-down perspective, wander around a map, smack things with a stick, and collect loot. It's split into acts. Each act has a town hub of some kind that you can explore relatively linearly, with a few optional side quests and bonus dungeons along the way. If you played a Diablo game, you know what to expect here, but there are some major differences. One thing that sets the Path of Exile games apart is the skill gem system. Instead of simply unlocking skills, you find skill gems that allow you to perform special moves and abilities. They can be modified with a lot of powerful support gems that do all kinds of crazy effects. Along with skill gems, there's the passive skill tree, a gigantic spider web of small upgrades you unlock as you level up. What's unusual about it is that every character class shares the same tree. Each one is just on different branches, so you get passives from any other class. You just basically get different starting points. It's almost overwhelming how many options you have here, and it's one of the many things that can make Path of Exile a daunting game to get into, but the flexibility of character building is one of the best things about it, and it looks like that's still the same in the sequel. Now, there's a lot of room for fiddling with armor sets and gems and passive buffs. You can lose hours just messing around with the vast amount of options here, but the real meat of these games, it's the combat, and this is where Path of Exile 2 makes the most dramatic changes, probably the most exciting changes as well. For starters, there's a dodge roll now, and unlike Diablo 4, there's no cooldown. It can be modified with additional effects with the passive tree. It has invincibility frames at the start of the roll, and you can even cancel out of any animation by using it. That alone is a game changer and immediately makes the combat more active and skill-based, but there's a lot more to it. Now you can use bows while moving and perform skills in motion as well. Skills aren't just one and done anymore. Most abilities you perform have a wind-up or an animation or a continuous build-up, so skill use isn't just all fire and forget. You actually have to think about what you're doing. Shields now come with a raised shield ability with included guard meter, so you can turtle up. Minions can now be commanded to do things for you. Stun effects can lead to a heavy stun, and all status effects require build-up to trigger, so most bosses are now susceptible to status ailments. The amount of changes goes on, but what this all adds up to is a combat system that's more about positioning and tactics. Not quite a Souls game, but you can see a lot of the inspiration here. Doesn't mean the game is slowed to a crawl or anything, though. It's just that it looks like they're changing the mechanics to make boss fights a little more engaging, and with this game supposedly having 100 bosses in the final release, the choice to make boss fights more interesting makes sense. All this, along with full controller support and WASD movement, is what you want to see in an action RPG. Of course, there's still good old-fashioned mouse movement if you prefer. That's not going away, but there are more options now. From all the footage I've seen, the combat in Path of Exile 2 just looks more interesting than the original game, but we'll obviously have to get our hands on it before we really know for sure how it stacks up. There's one more significant change in Path of Exile 2 that's going to make casual fans rejoice a bit. Other than the skill tree, the one aspect of the game that's probably responsible for scaring away the most new players is the skill gem system. It's been completely overhauled. How it worked in the original is you slotted gems into your equipment to unlock skills, not entirely unlike the basic idea of materia in Final Fantasy VII. Not quite like that, of course, but it sounds familiar to somebody who has played that. Now, depending on the piece of equipment you get, it has so many gem slots, and if a piece of equipment didn't match up with what you wanted or needed, you're kind of stuck. You have to use precious items to reconfigure the slots, or just wait till you get a piece of equipment that does what you need to do. On the flip side, this system is also made so you'd find awesome skill gems that you could never actually use for huge chunks of the game. What happens is you get a piece of equipment all configured how you like it, with all the skill gems and support gems you like slotted in, and then some other piece of equipment drops that's way better in terms of stats, but crappy in terms of gem slots. You're stuck, and while a lot of players love the complexity and challenge this system brings to character building, it can be frustrating and overwhelming because it, to be frank, can be pretty extensive with how it plays out, more so than Materia, at least in my opinion. And there's actually plenty of longtime fans who'd just be happy to see the skill system gone. So that's kind of what they did. In Path of Exile 2, skill gems now have their own tab completely separate from equipment. Your equipment still has slots, but you're not putting gems in them anymore. The equipment slots are reserved for runes and other effect boosting items. Now there's a gem menu with 9 slots for skill gems. Support gems are now socketed into the skills themselves, and the skill gems can drop with different possible sockets, so you can't 6-link skills right from the start. Sockets are now always linked, and they've completely eliminated the socket color system as well, so equipping gems is going to be a lot simpler in this game. Support gems in general have also been overhauled, so fewer of them have straight stat boosts. They're more about adding status effects or utility to a skill, which could make them more interesting in general, I think. You also can't equip more than one of the same support gems, so it seems like the entire system has been simplified for the better. There's also a lot of room for making tweaked out killing machines, but now there's more room to use different skills rather than just making one really powerful one, which was the general meta of the first game. Divorcing skill gems from equipment should hopefully enhance the experience overall. As a more casual player, I am all for this change. The game still looks complex as hell, just a little less so. So that's enough about the dry stat stuff now. Let's get into some nitty-gritty, but I mean, let's actually talk about the dark fantasy setting of Path of Exile 2. One thing these guys have always excelled at is art design. The continent of Rayclast is so grimdark, it'd make a Space Marine blush, but it really works to the series' favor, and they've taken all of it to the next level in this sequel. I mean, just look at some of the stuff from the early access gameplay trailer. Some of these gigantic bosses are nasty as hell. They look like some of the best and freakier monster designs in the genre, and there's so many of them. Sure, getting loot and making your character stronger and stronger are important parts of an action RPG, but for me, the atmosphere's got to be there, and there's a whole lot of things to kill that also need to be there, and Path of Exile 2 doesn't seem to be skimping. On the Steam page, they're stating there's going to be 100 distinct areas, 600 monsters, like I said a second ago, 100 bosses, and if they get anywhere even close to that amount, I'll be pretty pleased. So who exactly are you playing as here? There's going to be 12 base classes represented, each one filling a different niche. They're split up by different attribute focuses. So for strength, there's Marauder and Warrior. For dexterity, there's Huntress and Ranger. Intelligence has Witch and Sorceress. There's some hybrid dual classes as well. Like the first game, every class is represented on the passive tree, so you're free to mix skills with any other class. Your chosen class is basically your starting point, and you're free to take their growth in any direction you want, which is both a blessing and a curse. It's really easy to fall into the beginner's trap here and use the wrong skills for the wrong class, but at least the game is fairly forgiving with respecs. One thing that does change everything on your class is your starting location on the tree. If you're playing an alternate class like Marauder or Warrior, then the starting nodes are going to be different depending on the class. It's in the same location, but these skills are tailored to that class's particular play style. It's all mostly the same as the original, with one major change. There's now a dual specialization system, which allows you to have 2 entirely different skill tree settings that change when you change weapons. It's like being able to weapon swap in your average action RPG, but with your entire passive skill tree, which is a great new feature and honestly an incredible idea that allows you to allocate points in a way that supports both weapons you have equipped rather than just one. Like, in all seriousness, it allows you to have 2 radically different play styles accessible at the touch of a button, in my opinion. I think that's really cool. Like the first game, there are ascendancy classes that unlock a new skill tree and powerful upgrades, but they have to be obtained by completing challenges in the game. In the original, this was done by completing labyrinths, but in the second, you do trials instead, which seem to unlock a little earlier this time around. In the first game, you could get them in Act 3, and now it seems like the first trial is available in Act 2. In total, there's 36 ascendancy classes, so if you're worried this game was going to be less complicated than the first, there are options that allow you to get pretty complicated here. It's hard to believe I got this far without mentioning loot, or at least barely mention. I think I mentioned it, actually. Barely Barely, though. It's an action RPG after all. Loot is essential. And they have made some pretty major changes here. From everything I've read from the developers, it seems like they're trying to make each piece of equipment more distinct, both in stats and visuals. Sounds like loot's going to be more specifically themed around the act you find them in, and they'll have more unique modifiers than generic effects. That sounds good. Obviously, at this stage, we're still at the that sounds like blank, and I think good at this point, but we won't know for sure. There are 5 new pieces of equipment: spears, crossbows, traps, flails, and foci, which I think is the plural of focus, and they all have their own positives and negatives. Spears, for example, can be used in melee or thrown, and the crossbow has different types of ammo that you can fire along with attachments that can be held in the offhand like a grenade launcher. It's essentially a fantasy M16, which I am all for. Another thing they're doing to make weapons more distinct is that most attack skills are now weapon specific. There's a distinction between using one or two-handed versions of weapons, and it now matters if you're dual wielding, so you can't just dual wield everything anymore. Another major change is it sounds like loot drops are generally rarer, so you're not just going to be picking up as much stuff as the first game, which was already lighter on loot compared to a lot of other action RPGs. So the sequel sounds like they're leaning into these systems they're trying to make by making it so you're getting less stuff overall, and that it's actually better stuff, which I think sounds pretty good. Now, they're also making it so you want to buy stuff from stores every once in a while. Vendors are going to sell way more rare items, so there's actually a reason to check these places instead of just dumping unwanted loot there. Of course, the currency market is still in place, so you can buy and sell loot. So like I said, gold is now used for a lot of things, including respecing skills. So it sounds like gold will actually do something this time around. But let's talk about what you're actually doing in the game. I talked about the campaign length already. It's going to be 6 acts in the final release, which sounds short compared to the 10 in the first game, but keep in mind half of those acts were just going through the first 5 acts a second time. Sure, they mixed things up with some new bosses and enemies, but that doesn't mean it's not going through the first 5 acts a second time. This time, all 6 acts will be entirely unique and absolutely stacked with bosses. Every location is going to have some kind of boss in it. A lot of them are going to be optional, and killing them gets you major rewards like permanent stat boosts, for instance. It looks like some of these areas are going to be a little more dynamic and interesting to explore too, with traps and environmental hazards to keep things interesting. For a lot of people, the real meat of Path of Exile is the endgame, and this one is going all out with that stuff. The Atlas from the first game is returning, but there's so much more going on. The basics are going to be the same. You're exploring maps and killing elite enemies in each zone before progressing, with random encounters and modifiers to mix things up. You're not just repeating locations in the Atlas either. There's going to be new maps and unique locations, and there's even some kind of special endgame boss where you beat all the other pinnacle encounters, which are souped up versions of the regular end of act bosses. Tons going on here. It's a whole game unto itself with a multitude of unique mechanics. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds because it looks like there's going to be a whole lot to chew on. All that, and the game actually lets you pause when you're playing solo. And looking at the passive tree automatically pauses the game. The game even lets you play couch co-op with one other player, and you can do it by playing both characters on the same account or one character on 2 separate accounts, which is awesome to see. These games are great for couch co-op, and fewer games are offering that option than probably any other time during gaming's history. So it's nice to see a dev not only add it, but lets you decide how you want to do it. There's also full online co-op, of course, with up to 6 players, and there's full crossplay. The game's coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and Steam, and there's crossplay saving too, so you can freely switch from console to PC without missing a beat. At least that's the idea. So this is all sounding very good. The only downside is that the full release is still a ways off. Early access starts on December 2nd, but that unfortunately doesn't get you the full game. And if you want to start playing right away, you do have to pay up. The early access supporter pack is $30. It lets you play the game right away on December 2nd, but it's still missing key features, and it's only going to have 3 of the 6 total acts. The end game will be in place though, and according to the devs, that still means all 50 bosses will be accessible in the early access. So there's still going to be a lot of game available. Another exciting thing is that they're planning for early access to only last 6 months, which suggests the rest of the game is essentially finished. They just want to test things, or the stuff that they have to do is minimal, probably not vital stuff, but rather little touches or improvements, or generally stuff that's not specifically huge areas and bosses. Now that date could change. We've heard a lot of developers plan to do something in a certain amount of time and end up finding that it's a lot more daunting but it also says a lot that they're planning on the full launch 6 months after the early access rather than a year or two. Just to be clear, the final game will be completely free to play. It will cost nothing to download and turn on, so don't buy into the early access game unless you absolutely have to play this thing right away. You're literally paying to beta test the game, so it's almost certain that playing it in 6 months will be a better experience than December 2nd. Also, as someone ultra hyped about Path of Exile 2, you better believe I will be there day one. Basically, every single change they're making here, I am in favor of. It all looks great. On paper, it sounds great. I'm quite excited. Most people who've had a chance to play it are also excited and have given great feedback on it. I think it's going to be really big, and I generally don't think this could be bad. But that's me. This is before the game comes out, so there's a lot to talk about still, and the comments are a great place to do so. Tell us what you're thinking. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do it. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter and book me on Cameo at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.